we're the buffer between the bully and the bullied. People need to see themselves in that role. And I think that's really important. The vast majority, and I mean the vast majority of people that we work with, people who we serve in the community, love us.
Yes.
They want us there. There's a handful of people that don't care for us.
Criminals, they don't like us. Yeah.
Welcome to the Cops and Riders Podcast. Your host, Sergeant Patrick O'Donnell, worked the streets in one of the nation's largest police departments for over 25 years. Ride along with O'Donnell and his expert guests as they help you navigate the oftentimes confusing and misunderstood world of law enforcement. O'Donnell and his guests on this show do not represent any law enforcement agency. The content of this show is not meant to be legal advice. You think you need a lawyer? You probably do.
Hey, Cops and Writers, thanks for being here with us today for another episode of the Cops and Writers Podcast. I'm Patrick O'Donnell, and I'll be your host for today's show. This show is listener supported, so thanks to all of you who keep the show going. I would especially like to thank those of you who are patrons of the show. Your generosity helps pay for the software, equipment, and my time producing this show. Yes, you too can become a patron for less than a cup of coffee or a pint of Guinness. Just go over to patreon.com/Cops and Writers. If you're interested in actually seeing these interviews, head on over to the Cops and Writers YouTube channel. Welcome back for the conclusion of my conversation with retired Chief of Police and author Brian Brady. Brian was born and raised in the San Francisco area and became a police officer in Berkeley, California in the late 60s. He moved around to 4 different police departments, eventually attaining the rank of Chief of Police. After decades of serving and protecting, he retired from police work and transitioned to becoming a corporate security executive. This path led him to holding executive positions at prestigious organizations such as NBC Universal and the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. Brian has published 2 crime novels and is working on his third. I really enjoyed talking to someone like Brian, who has seen the evolution of police work through the years and worked his way up from police officer to chief. Brian is one of the only police chiefs I have known who didn't lose their way and bend to politics and ego. He has a good heart, and that is what's needed if you're going to lead a police force in today's world of distorted priorities and ego. Please enjoy this informative and wide-ranging conversation with Brian Brady. It was no
Yeah,
different where we were at. It's like, how can I make you look really bad? And, again, you have command staff or say captain and above that are chomping at the bit to get promoted. Because, we have, captains and there's inspectors, then there's assistant chiefs, then, the chief.
yeah.
So they want to look good by making other people look bad. And the chief fed off of that. He loved it. Oh my God. He just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, and I don't, I mean, the object of the game to me is to provide a level of service to the community and to improve on the delivery of that service. Can we do it faster? Can we do it better? Can we be more efficient? Can we let people in the community be more involved in the process? Can they have a say as opposed to just being policed to have a say in how the policing gets done? I think we miss the boat sometimes when we get too caught up in the stat, and then like you said, it's a flogging. You have some poor person there who's just getting beat up. Where to me, it's so much more beneficial to say, okay, captain, deputy chief, whatever, in your division, crime is really up in this reporting district over whatever time period. And then it should get, to me, you throw it up into the room because you've got all these other command staff in there. Let's hear some ideas of how we can help Captain so-and-so reduce crime in that area.
Yeah.
And everybody, but instead it's just, you beat the poor person up and, the captain goes out with their tail between their legs. And what they end up doing, sadly, and I don't know if it happened to you in Milwaukee, but I do know it happened in Los Angeles, where people in command start adjusting how things get reported.
Oh, yeah, they do.
So all of a sudden, what previously was a felony
Yep.
becomes a misdemeanor. So it doesn't hit CompStat.
Correct.
And I think now we're we're doing ourselves and our community a disservice. And if anybody thinks for a minute that that officer driving the black and white doesn't see through what you're doing and doesn't see you as a fraud, and you lose stature over the people that you're trying to be a leader to, you're just cutting your own throat. And I don't think that's beneficial. And I think Comstat encouraged that.
I think you're 100% right. Nobody wants to get called on the carpet. Crime cannot go up. There's only one crime that you can't use smoke and mirrors, and that's homicide. And, you got a dead person that another human being has killed.
Yeah, and I'm sure you went through the same thing we did. Your clearance rate in homicide used to be 80% or better.
Ours was 95%. Now it's down to 50.
Yeah, the thing was though, in the day, if you were going to get killed, you got killed by somebody you knew. Uh, there weren't drive-by shootings. There weren't mass shootings. There weren't, these kinds of things where homicide numbers can spike and go through the ceiling on a situation where someone has no control over it. Uh, but most of the homicides were people committing a homicide on somebody they knew or were acquainted with or something, or in commission of furtherance of another crime. And those were relatively easy to solve. But now you're getting ones where, like you said, a drive-by shooting where there's three dead people on a street corner and nobody knows nothing.
Yeah,
And those go unsolved.
for when I started, it was the worst time ever for homicides. And, it
Mhm.
was the crack wars. We call it the
Yeah,
crack wars. Everybody was killing each other. It was just one rival gang killing another, one drug dealer killing another drug dealer. You can't sling crack on my block. Or you'd have the guy that would sell somebody ivory soap instead of crack
sure.
or drywall or whatever. That will buy you a bullet in your head. Or, I saw people getting killed over nickel bags
Yep.
of just marijuana. But the big driving thing was dope. Drug, illegal narcotics. That was huge. And you'll always have the family members, follow the greed, follow the jealousy, follow the money, follow
Yeah.
you know, yeah, you can connect the dots, but yeah, we're down to like 50%. A lot of people are literally getting away with murder right
Mhm.
now. And it's
And
sad.
it is sad, and we have such great technology right now to help us. I mean, thank God for DNA. I mean, you think
Oh
about it.
yeah,
I mean, and I've worked cold cases, and I've done it on the side for families of people that I know,
sure.
and I have a very dear friend who's just finished working a cold case, retired, and the sheriff where he lives up in Montana asked him to look into a cold case, 25-year-old murder of a 15-year-old girl, and he solved it. He broke it and found the suspect. But it's DNA. It's
Yeah.
DNA today that didn't exist 25 years ago. The technology,
Oh, it's amazing.
uh, if you didn't have a hair with the root follicle on it, you're out of business. Today, there's DNA labs in San Francisco that can take a hair that doesn't even have nothing remotely to a root, and they can do familial DNA off that and give you at least three possible suspects. I mean, it's incredible. It's
It is.
absolutely incredible.
It really is. But, I kind of want to go back a little bit. Why would you want to be a chief of police? Where's this drive coming from? You had this drive that you wanted to go to the top.
Well, you want to be in charge. I don't take orders well. I've always wanted to be the person making the decisions. Uh, and it allowed me to do things that I could never have done at a lower rank. And I was in the right place at the right time. An agency, when you're operating in an agency of, let's say, 100 to 200, you have the ability as the lead person to be a pretty dramatic influence on the organization. You are closer to the people on the street. Uh, you should have a much closer relationship with your supervisors and command staff. So you have your ear to the ground. If you're the police chief in New York, the police commissioner with 38,000 police officers, how does the police commissioner of New York have any idea what's going on at the 15th precinct in Manhattan? And it's just overwhelming. Same with Los Angeles.
Right.
Jim McDonald's the police chief in Los Angeles. He's a good friend. He's a great chief. He's a great cop. And how do you police 10,000 police officers and there are 10,000 civilians and keep your finger on the pulse. And let's say you want to make a change, just like I did with the cars. I want the LA cars to go from this color to that color. Just a simple thing like that. You know, imagine what's involved
Yeah.
in a city the size of Los
Yeah.
Angeles to
That'd be
change
a
the color of a
boondoggle.
police car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had the ability to actually influence that and be much more intimately involved with the change. And hopefully to do change, make change that made the officers' lives better. Uh, we went to computers in the cars. We went to, we bought spell check because most of our guys couldn't spell.
Right.
So and that we all make that mistake, but the spell check's great. You got Grammarly now. You have all these reasons why the
Right.
reports. So it makes their job easier. We did various changes in the cars on the interiors of the cars based on what the officers wanted to try and make, 10 hours a day, that's their house. So
Yep.
you want to make that as efficient for them as humanly possible. So that gave, as the chief, you have that opportunity. You have the ability and use it wisely. You can also screw it up. I mean, I've probably made, I'd love to tell you that in my 12 years as chief, I made all great decisions and I was, they're going to put a statue up in the lobby of me. I don't know that that's going to happen, but um, I think I made more good decisions than bad ones. And I think the department was better for my having been there. And I think the officers had better equipment. I think they were better able to do their job. So yeah, that's why to be able to actually be able to influence things.
I think if your heart's in the right place and you have the smarts, you're going to be a good chief. But you are the political pinata.
Oh,
There's no doubt about it. It all lands in your lap. And I think it should land in your lap if you're the chief. You set the tone, but it's comical if if you if you're around a police department long enough, you see the cycle where for us, the mayor falls in love with, person X. And it's like, okay, you're now police chief. Oh my God, they're just gushing. It's a love fest. Oh, you could do no wrong until things get icky. Something happens where the optics
sure.
aren't so great, and that mayor will turn their back on that chief in half a second. And they're like, how could this have happened? I saw it happen 5 times. Five
Well, the other
times.
thing too is, I'm assuming Milwaukee has a strong mayor that's elected independently of the council or
Yes.
the board of supervisors.
Yep.
In Nevada, as is the case with a lot of cities in California, under 500,000 or so, the mayor serves on the council, and the mayor is one of 5 or 7 council members,
Oh,
and
okay.
then they rotate the mayor assignment, over the 1 year at a time. So the city is actually run by a city manager or a city administrator, depending, and
Mm,
that person is normally someone who's got at least a master's degree in planning or urban research or something along those lines where they know how to run a city.
yeah.
Because a lot of council members have no idea how to run a city. Oftentimes they run on a single issue.
Right.
Uh, Somebody wants to build a homeless shelter in this neighborhood. So the council member hears, or the person who runs for council opposes it. And there's a significant number of people in the neighborhood who oppose it. So they elect that person the council member. So they'll vote against the homeless shelter in their particular neighborhood. Okay, that's great. That's one issue. But there's a lot more things facing Milwaukee
Right.
or Nevada or San Francisco. But that
Sure.
council member is an expert on the location of a homeless shelter. They don't know anything about paving a street or a sewer system or a water
Yeah.
recovery. So the city manager should have that background. So anyway, long story short, sometimes a city manager comes in whose background may be park and recreation. It may be
Mm,
public planning.
yeah.
It could be public works. Could be police. Could be fire. But they cut their teeth in a particular department, and that's where their allegiance seems to be.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
if you have a city manager who came from public works and you're the public works director, you're probably in a pretty good spot on the budget compared to
Right. Right.
your
I
fire
get it.
chief. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it shuffles. I mean, and like you hit it right on the head. It's cyclical. It
Yes.
just depends on who's sitting in that seat.
Absolutely. So after being in, 4 different departments, yeah, you've done most jobs in a police department. What was your
Mhm.
favorite or least favorite?
a patrol sergeant by far.
Okay.
Uh, I I liked being on the street. I liked being close to what was happening. Uh, I liked being able to work with officers, um, to be able to teach, to be able to um, make them better cops. Uh, and ultimately, we end up. Uh, and I say this because Berkeley taught us, and people have you know their thoughts. You mentioned Madison, interesting place. Berkeley's an interesting place. However, historically, Berkeley has been at the cutting edge of law enforcement over the last 100 years.
Mm.
The first department to have radios in patrol cars, the first department to have motorcycle, first department to have police dog, first department to have a lie detector. We had a woman and black officer in the 20s. So the department did things way ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
We had an MO system before the FBI did. Uh, so they taught us a lot about our history, and so you want to help be able to convey that to the new people. So being a street sergeant, you could do that.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree with you. So you retired from law enforcement, you went over to corporate security.
Hmm.
Now the one thing that's with television studios, correct?
Movie, TV,
Yeah,
theme
movie.
park, the whole
What
thing.
here's my big question, and I didn't have it written down, it just popped into my head when we were talking. How could the whole Alec Baldwin thing happen? Where's
Oh,
the breakdown?
well,
Where you have live ammunition on a set. That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
no, there's a myriad of screw ups on that, and you had an armorer who wasn't qualified. uh, Big problem. That's now the armor could have been really talented, but they weren't quote qualified. They didn't have the paperwork, and that's what there's no way that person should have been on a set handling a weapon
No.
without that. And I say this because I have a very good friend who is a weapons and effects person for the movie industry. And when that happened, he's the first person I called. And he said, "There's no way that should have happened." He said, if I was the armorer on that movie, that never would have happened." And uh, I watched him on movie sets, and he runs a tight ship. Any weapon is locked in literally a vault, and he issues the weapon
Wow.
only
I
after he checks it. And so there are checks for this. How that happened, how that gun and that live ammo got is beyond me. The checks and for us at Universal, our checks and balances, that couldn't happen.
Okay, yeah, I just that blew my mind when I saw that. But the same thing happened. Now I'm thinking, Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son. That's how he
Hmm.
died during the filming of The Crow.
Yeah,
I,
and there's still a lot of questions about that one.
yeah, yeah.
Whether that was intentional or accidental.
But I
And
just
the
can't.
Baldwin one was obviously accidental, but the Bruce Lee one, there's still and again, who knows? There's enough conspiracy theorists out there that
Oh yeah,
there's
absolutely. So how
but
easy was it to transition from retirement to working in the civilian world?
um, well, that's a really good question. The the transition wasn't that difficult. The corporate world is different, and you have to get a feel for the way things are done. I lucked out. I had arguably one of the best bosses I ever worked for at Universal, a guy named Jim Waters, who was the president of studio operations, and he was he was demanding in that he had uh, a criteria that he adhered to, and he wanted things done in a particular way. But he told you what the rules were. He told you what the consequences were. He told you how he wanted it done, and he supported you. Well, I can't ask for any more than that. Somebody tells you what the rules are, and he enforced the rules across the board. He was Honesty was paramount. Integrity was paramount. If you lied, cheated, or steal, you're gone. And that frequently people talk the talk. And when the janitor takes something, there's no trouble firing him. But when somebody up higher does something,
Ah,
it gets under the carpet. Well, I sat in with him and watched him fire a vice president for cheating on his expense account.
wow.
Now, yeah, and that wasn't like I'm going to give you two warnings. I'm going. you stole, you're gone.
Okay.
And so I loved working for him.
Sure.
Absolutely loved it. And he supported you. But you mentioned the closed door when you came into the captain's office.
Yeah.
He had a magnet on his door. So when you walked in, he could touch the magnet and the door closed behind you. And that was, when you walked in his office and when the door closed behind you, it was like, oh no. So fortunately, in my case, as the head of security, it was usually going to be one of two things. Either somebody screwed up or it was just something very confidential that he didn't want
Right.
anyone else to hear.
Right.
And fortunately, vast majority of the time, it was something that was confidential. But great boss. So that made the move a lot easier because I knew what was expected of me.
Okay.
And he gave me some, again, same thing. He supported you. Um, he gave me a lot of latitude on hiring and the way I wanted to do. I did make changes. I think I made it a little bit better. Uh, and I had good people. And we worked with some fabulous people. I mean, I loved my time down there. I had a lot of fun. And the movie industry is fascinating. It's a whole different world. I
Oh,
mean,
I'm
there's
sure.
in the theme parks a whole different world. I mean,
Yeah.
you have millions literally of people coming through your doors every day. I mean, every year. And you've got to ensure their safety. You've got to ensure the
Sure.
safety of all your employees. You've got massive parking lots. You've got, it's a little city unto itself.
Now, doesn't is LA County Sheriff's responsible for that?
Yes, to 85% of our property was in the county and
Okay.
15% was in the city. So
All
that
right.
made life interesting because
Yeah.
uh, not so
Yeah.
much for me, but for if we were going to do an expansion, let's say on one of our stages,
Yeah.
well, you had to go to the county for part of the permitting and the city for part of the permitting, and so it could make life really exciting for our builders. But the law enforcement part, no, we had a really good relationship with LA County Sheriff and LA
Okay.
City PD. Uh, and we actually had a sheriff substation on the
That's
property.
what I thought. Yeah, yeah. I had
Yeah,
Cliff Yates on there on my
yeah.
show, and he worked that, and he said that was probably one of his favorite parts of working for the LA County Sheriff's.
It was a nice facility. You're actually for the most of the day you're in the park, most of the evening, and people like seeing you. I
Right.
mean, the
They're
people are
giving you a
happy to see
five
you.
finger
People
wave.
are
Yeah.
happy. Yeah, it's a nice place to be. Occasionally, you got to deal with. We had three bars on our City Walk property, which is adjacent to the park, and those three bars had a total capacity of 3,000.
Oh.
So you can imagine what it looks like at 2 a.m. closing when you
Uh,
dump 3,000 bar patrons out onto one area and then into a parking lot to get vehicles. And on a Friday or Saturday night, you're going to have fights.
oh
You're going to
yeah.
have drunks. So the sheriff's, that part of the assignment was, a little stressful. And of course, part of it was in the city of LA. So one of the bars, the parking lot was in the county and the bar itself was in the city.
Yeah.
So you end up getting partnered up with LAPD, LA Sheriff, and they work really, really well together up on our property. They were great.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So you did that for a while, and you were also security at it was a art museum, or where was that?
Yes. San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. Art museum, about 50,000 square feet of art space. They decided to enlarge. They bought some property. They built from a 3-story to an 11-story. Went from 50 to 165,000 square feet of art. We are now the museum now is right next to MoMA in New York, size-wise, as far as
Wow.
modern art. And so I was there as we've built it out and put the security in and set up the systems and all for the new museum. That was another interesting job. Totally different world.
Yeah, I would have no clue how that would even work. That just seems so daunting to me.
It's at Universal. If you were going to steal $1 million worth of our property, you'd have to bring in an 18-wheeler.
Right.
Uh, if you're going to steal $1 million worth of art, you can put it in a briefcase.
I was just gonna say, like a Fabergé egg or whatever. I'm thinking to myself for one piece of whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, what pops into my mind, I remember I was in the academy and the King Tut exhibit was moving around the country. And I talked to a couple of coppers when I got out of the academy, And they're like, yeah, they had Egyptian guards with Uzis that were guarding this stuff. And, it was just a different level altogether.
People don't realize when you see a museum in Milwaukee, let's say, and they're going to have a Van Gogh exhibit. Well, the chances are that museum in Milwaukee may only own two Van Goghs, maybe only own one Van Gogh.
Right.
There's a finite number of Van Goghs out there. But for the exhibit, you're going to need more than that. So they call us, they call MoMA, they call the Metropolitan, they call the Chicago Art Institute, and we all donate a Van Gogh or
Hmm.
two.
Yeah.
So at some point before that opens in transit is probably $1 billion worth of art moving around the
Right.
country, coming to the Milwaukee Museum for the exhibit. And then it has to go back. And it's reciprocal. In Milwaukee Museum might have Warhols, might have 10 Warhols,
Yeah.
and we're going to do a Warhol exhibit. So they'll send us. So anyway, this goes on all the time on exhibits. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Somebody tells me we're going to move a gazillion-dollar painting. We are? How are we going to do that? How? So that was a fascinating change.
Yeah. Clark wants to say
Huh.
hi. But yeah, I just think about that. And yeah, that's just a world I have no idea. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you steal this Van Gogh or whatever, where are you going to fence it? You got to resell this thing.
There's and now I'm going to do a shameless plug. Well, the third book I wrote is called Greed,
Yes.
and it starts in Paris with art forgery and art theft and works its way back to San Francisco. So I was able to parlay what I learned at the museum and talking to our people who do our restorations and conservatorships, et cetera, that they were hugely beneficial teaching me that. But you're absolutely right. There's a very limited market. And what you have are people like these Russian oligarchs and some of the princes in the Middle East who have no problem paying the money for it.
Okay.
And no one's going to challenge them.
But somebody's going to
Uh,
have to expedite that sale. It's all illegal.
yeah,
And
it's
that's
it's not
that's
it,
like
it,
Interpol stuff almost.
yeah, it's not like taking a watch to the pawn shop. I
Right,
mean,
exactly.
it moves in a very, very limited circle, and but there are some really, really good forgers out there, and there are some pieces of art that are hanging in museums that are not originals.
Well, I know
And
I know you can't say, but I would think that the security measures for something like this would be, incredible. I don't know how you would steal something out of one of those exhibits.
well, look at the Gardner in Boston.
Yes.
That's still unsolved. I mean, and it doesn't just happen. Art theft, armored car theft, it's an inside job. I mean,
Oh,
you can almost
absolutely.
bet on that.
Right.
So you got to have somebody who knows the systems. We were putting in new systems at the museum. So there was only a limited number of people who knew that system, but there was more than one. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And the security company that you're working with, the electronics, the electricians, all that stuff's going in. There are people who are watching it go in, people who know how it's wired. I mean, because we're
Yeah.
building. It's a
Yeah, I
brand new
just think
building.
of Tom Cruise dangling from, wires, working on pressure plates and all that other kind of
And
stuff.
it's not that, well, the other thing too is to without giving away trade secrets,
Right.
when you hang a painting, or they use the term install, when they install a painting, uh, a lot of those paintings, the valuable one, the Matisses, the Van Goghs, they're electronically monitored. If that painting moves a quarter of an inch, you know.
Sure.
So it's pretty difficult and a lot of them are attached they're not hung on the wall. They are attached to the wall.
Okay.
Uh, we had pieces of art when they installed the art that they literally cut a hole in the sheetrock to get to the studs and attach the painting and then put the sheetrock in behind it.
Wow.
You couldn't have got that painting off the wall with a forklift.
Dang. Yeah, I was just thinking about, you talked about the Gardner Museum heist that's still unsolved. That was from March 18, 1990. 500 million in art was stolen out of that heist.
and that news clipping is on the front on the desk of every director of security of every museum in the country.
I do not doubt that. But let's talk about your books. Where did this start? Where did your authoring start?
It started in probably about 2017 when I had left the museum. I started like talking with you, and we're
Yeah.
talking, reminiscing. And over the years, four departments, two states, some private security stuff. Over the years, I've collected some interesting anecdotal stuff, and I put it in a file. And one day, I was talking with some friends about a story, and they said, "God, it's a great story. You got to write a book." I said, "Okay, maybe I'll try." So that's kind of was the impetus to try and write something. And then I thought about, well, you could write about a particular case, kind of a true crime. But I really didn't want to write just about a case because, and I'm not knocking true crime, don't get me wrong. It's good stuff and there's some great
Oh
authors
yeah,
out there.
absolutely.
But it's one crime and it's really crime centric. And you really don't develop the characters very much.
Mm,
The players, they're really ancillary to the crime.
yeah.
So I wanted to do crime fiction. I wanted to take a real case or several real cases and create a case,
Yeah.
but make it about the investigation. Make it about the officers, the inspectors, the detectives who are working the case, and make it character driven. Make their interactions with one another, their interactions with their bosses, their interactions with the bad guys, so that they were uh, interesting and that people want to read about them. So that's kind of the way the story is developed. Character driven, based on a real occurrence or occurrences with a good, accurate portrayal of the investigation.
Yeah.
So, did one book. People liked it. I'm not Michael Conley yet. That's who I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah.
But the second book then was loosely based on a homicide case that I had worked, where a 13-year-old girl was murdered, and the story is basically that, only it's moved to San Francisco, and it takes place in North Beach. And then the third book, which just came out last spring or in April, uh, moves into the art theft world,
And that's
and it
Greed, right?
starts,
That's your latest
and
book
then
is
yeah,
Greed.
and then it moves back to San Francisco because of greed. There's a homicide, and then
Ah,
the same characters. So the books deal with the same characters in all three books. They're sequential, but you can read them out of sequence. I mean,
okay.
they're not, you don't have to read one, two, three. It flows a little better if you do, and it's better for me if you buy all three. But so, uh, but you can just take them one at a time.
So you have three books out right now, and those are a series?
Yeah, pretty much a series, and
Okay.
they're I think they're interesting read. The reviews have been good. Again, I don't have an agent, and if there's one listening, call me. That's the push you really need if you're gonna sell a lot of books, and you work with the big four, the big five publishing houses because they're the ones that get it out there on the New York Times. They're the ones that do the nationwide book tours and that. I do book signings. I've done book signings,
Yeah.
and they're fun. I thoroughly enjoy them. I meet people. That's great,
Yep.
but you need somebody out there beating the drum for you, and
Now,
that's.
did you self-publish these books?
Oh boy, you're gonna regret that question. Uh, First one, I went with a publisher that you'll probably see on Amazon or any internet. Google published book, and you'll find a myriad of publishers saying, "Oh, we'll publish your book for $3,000,
Yep.
and in
Vanity
5 weeks you'll
publishers.
be a New York Times
Yep.
best-selling author."
Yeah,
No,
vanity
you won't.
publishers. Yep.
No, you won't. You will be minus $3,000. I'll guarantee you that.
Yep.
But you will not be a New York Times best-selling author. And when you try and come back on people on not living up to the agreement, you'll find out that the companies frequently are not in the US
Yeah.
and they're judgment proof. So I would warn anybody who wants to publish, stay away from these people. Number two, I tried, and I'm saying this because I learned the hard way. It was expensive, and I severed that relationship. I then went with Amazon and self-published,
Yeah.
and that's really inexpensive and it's quick They're very respectful, very responsive. Unfortunately, you are one of 1 million books they publish.
Oh yeah, more than that
And
actually.
if you want to be seen, you're not going to you just fall into the flotsam and jetsam of published books. So I did what's called hybrid publishing. I went with a publisher, and I'll mention that the publisher is Palmetto, and they're out of South Carolina. And they published a book for a friend of mine who's a homicide inspector in San Francisco, and he said they treated him well. So I called them. I actually talked to the CEO or the president of the company, and I went with them and I republished the book I had the problem with them. So I've stayed with them, and they've been very responsive and very good. The problem is they don't market your book, and that's where your agent comes in, and that's where places like Random House or Macmillan or one of these Penguin, one of these big houses, they have a whole marketing division, and that's how you get a lot of books sold.
Well,
But for them to like your book,
right, but
tough.
the problem though is 'cause I know a lot of mid-tier authors that are published traditionally, hybrid, and indie. And the ones, unless you're James Patterson or Stephen King, they'll push your book for, I don't know, a couple of months, somewhere in that ballpark. Then after that, it is entirely in your lap.
Oh yeah.
You got to take care of it no matter what. I mean, that's just, yes. you know,
You also find out quickly that if you're fortunate enough, to get to one of those places and they give you an advance. Now you're not going to get a big advance. And like you said, if
no,
you're Conley
right.
or Patterson or
You'll get a
yes,
big one, but if you're Pat O'Donnell, you're not getting a big advance. It's just not going to
no.
happen.
And if you get anything, and if you
Right.
do, it's an advance against sales. They're not giving you money.
Right.
They give you that advance, and then until you sell a certain amount of books and pay them back, you're not going to make any money.
Right.
So it's tough. It's a tough business, and there's a lot of people out there that want to write a book, and I know God love them. I think it's great. And there's people out there who have a lot of stuff to say and good things to say, and I wish them well. It's a lot harder than it looks, and publishing is harder than it looks. And the writing part. You got to commit to it. It's got to be a bit of a job. You have to look at it that way. I know most of these guys, like Conley, I had an opportunity to talk with him very briefly, and he writes every day.
Sure.
He gets up early, 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 and he writes. And most of these good authors do that. They might only write 5, 6, 8 pages, but they write every day. It's their job. That's what they do.
Yep.
And I have great respect for
Yeah, I'm a binge writer. Like I said, I
them.
did hybrid writing, and the my publisher was, rapid release. So I wrote 4 books in like 6, 7 months. And those were
Hmm.
70,000, 80,000 word books. And I had to work every day. You had to have the discipline, and you can do
Yeah.
it. It'll drive you a little buggy, but you can do it. I don't know how sustainable that is. For some people, they've got that wired inside of them. I do not.
And right now, you start, AI stuff. There are people writing books with AI.
Oh yeah,
And the good news is the Copyright Office has got a pretty good algorithm, and they won't copyright your book if it's AI. And they're doing a pretty good job of sifting through what you send them, and denying you if it's AI. Now, that's not saying you can't use AI for research,
right.
much like you would use Google or any other
Right.
search engine.
It's almost like having a buddy. It's like, okay, I'm stuck on this chapter. Give me 5 variations of an outcome. And all 5 might suck what they give you, but it might trigger something in your lizard brain. It's like, oh, okay, you know what? I'm going to do this instead. So it's almost
What
like
is it?
having a writing buddy.
Chat GPT at the bottom of their page, it says AI can be wrong.
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely. It
yeah.
could be very wrong. They
So,
make stuff up. Yeah,
mhm.
there's no doubt about that. But, AI just continues to get better and better. And, it's like electricity. People were scared to have electricity in their house. It's like the tractor, it's like it's here, it's not going away, and it's only going to get better. So you have a choice to either master it and figure a way out how to make it work for you, or just get out of its way and just put up your hands and just quit.
Yeah, it won't come up with the idea for your story. It won't do that. You're going to have to be creative, and it's
Or it
not
won't
going
do a very good job of it, that's for sure.
to. No. But the writing part, I still work. I do consulting work for a security firm here in the Bay Area, and uh, I mean it's a great job. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy that started the company used to work for me, and he asked me if I'd help him, so I said I would, and he's doing great. And there'll come a point, I'm sure, shortly where I will be obsolete. But the but it's been fun working with him and watching the company take off and seeing what he's done with it. So I still do that,
Yeah.
but the writing part has been, and you've done it. One of my stories, I was stuck for a couple of months. I mean, I created this bad guy who I worked really hard on him, and he is clever and all. He's so good. I don't know how I'm going to catch him.
Yeah.
Uh, I,
Yeah.
I've painted myself in a corner. You can't have somebody who's clever, clever, clever through 10 chapters and then have them leave a fingerprint. That's
Yeah,
stupid. It's not going to
exactly.
happen.
You're right.
Yeah. So you got to come up with something that's out of the ordinary, that's believable, that could happen to somebody who's really smart.
Yeah, and
So,
I'm also a big believer in character-driven stories. I mean, people they want, like a good character that they can sympathize with, have empathy for. They want, they want to be their buddy. They want to hang out and have a beer
absolutely.
with this person. Who doesn't want to be James Bond for God's sakes? What
You
guy
know,
doesn't want to live a James
it's,
Bond life for a little bit?
no, you're right. And that to me, that's what I think is the separation between true crime and crime fiction is the character.
Okay.
I mean, I asked Conley. I mean, I hate to keep bringing Michael Conley up, but he's such a good example. I asked him that question. I said, is Titus Welliver Harry Bosch in your mind? Is that who you saw? Because I said it didn't for me. I had a whole different Harry Bosch in my mind.
Oh,
And when I
okay.
first saw Titus Welliver, it was like, oh God, that's not Harry. But today, it couldn't be anyone else.
Yeah.
That's Harry Bosch.
It's
Uh,
funny because, I have friends that are like, oh, Bosch is so great, blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, I don't watch most police shows on TV because they're just ridiculous and silly. And I'm like, okay, I'll give this a try. And I'm watching it, and there's like 100 different procedural things that are wrong with it. And I'm like, he's taking a gun and sniffing it. The girl who commits suicide, like the first one. There's no boss or a completely ineffective boss that lets him break all the rules, and blah, blah, blah. And but as time went on, my wife liked it, so I watched it with her. It's like, I like this guy. He's kind of a tortured soul. He likes jazz. I like jazz, and he does have a sense of humor. And then the side characters, Crate and Barrel, his partner was
oh,
awesome.
they're great.
That's what made that show.
The, I agree with you. And I think, and Conley, I saw him interviewed, and he said, Welliver has embraced the character to the point he said they're getting ready to shoot, and Conley said, um, I do the character. I'll do a rewrite. I mean, I'm very concerned, but the background is I let the studio, the writers for the studio or HBO, whoever's doing it,
Sure.
they have staff writers, but I handled the character. So he said I'd get a phone call. It's like middle of the night or whatever when they were shooting, and it's Welliver, and he says they want me to do this, and Harry Bosch wouldn't do that. He is so immersed in the character that he's
Yes,
now calling Conley saying, no, 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 they can't make the character do this because it's not right. And Conley said he was right. The character, so they changed it. But it's to the point now, Welliver is so Harry Bosch, he's thinking like Harry Bosch.
that's funny. Yeah, he's which can be a double-edged sword because as an actor, I mean, I'm not in Hollywood. I don't know jack squat about Hollywood, but you got to eat and pay the bills. And it's like there's only so many Harry Bosch kind of characters for you out there. You get
Yeah,
you
and
get plugged into that, that persona. And that's tough.
he's
That's tough to break out of.
well, that's one of the, and that you see that with TV. That's
Yep.
why you'll see somebody like on a show like Friends or Big Bang or something like that who have six, seven, eight, nine successful seasons that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars per episode walk away. And they walk away because they're being typecast.
Yep.
Um, Somebody becomes that person, like Jim Parsons, who plays Sheldon on Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
Can you see Jim Parsons doing any other role?
No.
If you saw now you saw him in the movie with Kevin Costner, where they talked about the African American women who worked in NASA,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
he was in that, and he did a good job. And there was nothing his role,
But
but
he
it was
was
a
a
different
nerd there.
role.
He was an egghead.
He was still a nerd, but he
Yeah.
wasn't quite Sheldon. He wasn't quite
Right.
nuts. But he, you had to take a step back when you first saw him, and
Yes.
it's not Sheldon anymore. And they're all afraid of that, that they're gonna have this great successful run, and they can't be anybody else.
Right. You
Uh,
know, it's
and
like
and it's valid.
I think of like Daniel Craig. I'm a huge James Bond, fan. And but he actually has been able to parlay that. And he's had some roles after James Bond that you're like, he was like a Southern gentleman. And what
Hmm.
was that, Knives Out, I think, or something like that?
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
done two of those.
And he did a great job. And I'm just like, wow, that's not easy to do.
Well, he's a good actor. Actually, the James Bond characters, Connery's a good actor.
Oh
I mean, he's
yeah.
been, and Roger Moore was a good actor. Pierce Brosnan's a good actor.
Yep.
Craig's a good actor. They can do anything.
Right.
But you're right. For a period of time, you do enough James Bond, you're
You are
James
James
Bond.
Bond. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're James Bond for God's sakes. There's no getting around it.
But the public's great though. They pivot pretty well because when they first switched from Sean Connery to Pierce Brosnan, it was like, oh no, that's not James Bond. Sean Connery's James Bond. But
Yeah.
after one movie, Pierce Brosnan's James Bond.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was Roger Moore, I think, was after.
was it
Yeah,
whatever the
yeah,
whatever the switch was? But people embraced it. And they moved right on.
yeah. They figured it out, but I still think the two best was Sean Connery for sure. He's the original. He's the OG. He is
Yep.
the James Bond. But Daniel Craig, especially Casino Royale, what I loved about it was the grittiness. This guy is a womanizing chauvinist. Frickin' he's a secret agent where he has one job. He works for the Queen. And
Mhm.
he's going to do whatever needs to be done and use whoever he has to use to complete whatever task he needs to complete. You know, no feelings, no, blah blah blah. He's a hired killer. There's
Yeah.
there's there's the opening scene where he's in that bathroom in that fight scene. My heart rate was going out of my chest because I have been in fights, where somebody was trying to kill me. It's happened like two times on the job. And when everything was done and over with, it says, "Yeah, I was going to take your gun and I was going to shoot you and kill you and your partner." Very matter of fact. And when it comes down to that, like I said, my heart's beating out on my chest, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, they did a good job with this. I'm impressed." But
Yeah.
you know what? We're running a little bit long on time here. Your latest book, Greed. Tell you what, if it makes it to the big screen, who would you want being the main character? Who would you want
You know,
playing it?
that's a really tough question. And you're not the first one to ask me that. And I'll tell you what's happening to me. I look at since I've been away from the studio, I don't follow the movies as closely as I did. So I'm stuck back thinking about the actors that I saw on stage or on the set and the people that you had some interaction with. And some of the people that jump out at me to be characters, I love Edward Norton.
Oh
And
yeah,
I think he's a great
absolutely.
actor. I think he can play any role. I think he would be excellent. I think Timothy Oliphant, who played in Justified, I think he
Mm,
would be excellent. I think then, of course, you look at the others, you go, well, someone like Matt Damon, I think is great. I think that's like these guys are now in their 50s. I
yeah.
mean, they're I think time is standing still, but it's really not. And I really don't know, to be perfectly honest with you, enough of the younger actors
Well,
that are out there
I
right
should have
now.
prefaced it with living or dead. So we've got a
Yeah,
time
yeah,
machine here,
yeah.
Brian. We got a
But I
time
like
machine.
the ones I mentioned. I do like, and
Yeah.
I like Matt Damon. I think he's. I mean, I'll tell you a guy who I really think is a good actor, and I wasn't enamored with him initially, was Brad Pitt.
Okay.
Brad Pitt's done a really good job. He's I think evolved into a really fine actor. Um, Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean,
Sure.
stellar actor. I mean, these are all. I mean, you'd have to have. Yeah, to get those guys, you got to have Scorsese directed.
Yeah, you're
You
good.
know,
Yeah, you
you
have
know,
some serious juice there. Yeah, there's no doubt
yeah,
about
those
that.
are you're talking $25 million people. Uh, but yeah, if you could have those people play your roles, it'd be great. It'd be fun.
All right. Okay. Hey, do you know Adam Plantinga? He's a San Francisco PD sergeant, and he's a very good author. His career has really taken off.
Huh? No, I do not. But
Yeah, I
um,
interviewed him. He was a Milwaukee guy, and
oh,
he went to a Jesuit college, and of course, there's a girl involved, so that's how he wound up on the West Coast.
what did you go to Marquette?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. My old partner from the job, Boris, if you're listening, he's a Marquette grad. I've got a bunch of buddies that went to Marquette.
Al McGuire.
Yep, absolutely. All right, one more point for law enforcement. It seems like law enforcement's kind of at a low point, to say the least. What words of encouragement can you offer to those with all of your experience, to new cops or those who are, still doing the job that are grinding it out every day?
Uh, I think it's a great career. I loved my job. I enjoyed it. I think we're the buffer between the bully and the bullied. And I think people need to see themselves in that role. And I think that's really important. Um, the vast majority, and I mean the vast majority of people that we work with, people who we serve in the community, love us.
Yes,
They want us there. There's a handful of people that don't care for us. And,
criminals,
and
they don't
that
like us.
handful's
Yeah,
been there since, they had Sir Robert Peel and the
yeah,
Peelers in London. I mean, it's existed throughout time immemorial. So I don't think it's any worse than it was in the 70s or when I was, on the street. But and as a matter of fact, oddly enough, it was more dangerous in the 70s as far as losing officers than it is today.
yeah. You didn't have
We
vests. We
lost
didn't have
almost
tactics. You
double
didn't
the
have
amount
right.
in the
You
70s. So
you didn't have the equipment
that's
or training that we have now.
we do have better equipment.
Yep.
We are better trained. We have all of those things, but it is a good job, and people really do, want you there. Um, and I think, sadly, I think a lot of young officers are reading the press releases, and have adopted, not all, some have adopted kind of a firefighter philosophy of, I'll respond to the call, but aside from that, I'm going to drive around with my window rolled up and the air conditioning on. And that's not good. That's not the way to be a cop. Your job is proactive. You need to be out there. You're getting paid to do a proactive approach. So I would hope it's a good job, and the salaries have improved. You can make a living, you can raise a family, you can do whatever you choose to do. However, I never would have thought when I started this job that I'd see police officers making six-figure salaries on the street. I mean,
Yeah.
that's unheard of, but it's reality. So yeah, I think it's a good career, and you can make a difference. How many jobs can you have where you can actually make a difference in someone's life, that you can actually impact somebody? And I think we need to push that with people. We need to let them know that that's out there, that's for the taking, and you can actually do something special.
Absolutely. So what's next for you?
Um, I'm finishing up a departure book. This one's going to actually move up in new characters up into Wyoming and Montana with a militia group.
Oh,
So it'll be a little bit different. And the fourth book in the series with the San Francisco is about, I don't know, about two-thirds done.
okay.
I think I finally figured how to catch the guy. So I'm going to be able to move forward, get past that. And I've got some ideas for a couple of more, so I think I'm going to keep writing and keep after it. I still like it, and I think so far so good. The people who have reviewed the books have enjoyed them. I've got good reviews on Amazon and that sort of thing, and people who have come to book signings seem to have fun. And
Sure.
some of the Q&A is always fun. I love that part. That's people have great questions, and that makes my day. That's really a good time.
All right. Well, very good. Where can people go to find out more about you and your work?
Website is goldengatetales.com, and there's a forum on that you can click on, And if you want to ask a question or something like that, I'm usually really good about getting back to that.
Okay.
I try and check it every day and respond to people. And there's an email, Brian at goldengatetales.com. And that's in usually at the tail end of the book. So if somebody had a question about the book or something like that. And again, I'm not going to guarantee I'll get you back in 24 hours, but I'll get back to you. I think I owe anyone who spent money to read the book a response if they have a question.
All right. Well, the name of the latest book is Greed. Brian Brady, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks everyone for joining me for the conclusion of my conversation with retired Chief of Police and author Brian Brady. Thank you, Brian, for taking us on a tour of your super interesting experiences and life. I can't wait to see what's next for you. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Cops and Writers podcast. If you haven't done so yet, can you take a minute and rate and review the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? If you have already, thank you. As always, thank you for all of your support and, of course, let's be careful out there.